Welcome to the Bill Levinson Experience, a motivational podcast relating to the insurance brokerage industry and business in general. And now, here's Bill Levinson.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Bill Levinson Experience Podcast. Here we are just about more than halfway through April, right? And very, very exciting stuff to launch the new year. We had 3 amazing episodes in January, February, and March, and this is number 4, and I'm just as excited, if not even more excited, about this particular episode, and I think you all will feel the same when we wrap up. We have a special guest speaker joining us that I'm very excited to introduce, and for a number of reasons, but I think probably the coolest thing that I'm most excited about personally is this is a ex-NFL professional football player, okay, who played for 14 years, of course, in the NFL for the Seahawks, the Falcons, the Steelers, the Eagles, even played in a Super Bowl. So a very cool story, and here's the icing on the cake is this person, right, has transitioned from an NFL pro football player into our insurance business. So very, very neat stuff. We've had some awesome guest speakers in the past. Professional baseball player, Jorge Soler from the Royals and played in the World Series on the Cubs, Gary Vaynerchuk. Now Norm Johnson is joining us as well. So I couldn't be any more excited. And what I want to do first, before officially introducing Norm, is just let everyone know, take out a pen and paper, use your notes app on your smartphone or tablet, whatever the case is. I want to make sure that everyone walks away with some great nuggets that you can use in your everyday sales practice, right? That's the name of the game here. So yes, of course, it's a cool story. But again, if there's anything you can pick up and learn that will help you in your personal or business life, that's a win and well worth the 45 minutes to an hour spent with us today. Also, I want to let you know, if you love hearing Norm speak about his story and are interested in partnering up with him, okay, that he's also available, and we can, of course, make the introduction. I'm also going to give you Norm's website when we wrap up here at the end, so you can get in touch with Norm on your own. So great stuff to come. And I'm also going to mention before we jump in, Norm has teamed up with Alex and Kevin as well, right? Norm's based out of Seattle, but they all 3 work with agents all over the country. And if you're in the Seattle area, that's even better. So, of course, again, let us know. We'll make the introduction and hopefully team you all up for a great start in the insurance business. Okay, so real quick, Norm, first off, I want to thank you and welcome you to the Bill Levinson Experience. So we all appreciate you taking the time. So thank you for doing this, Norm.
Absolutely. It's great to be here, Bill. Love Levinson, love everything you're doing. And I do want to add one thing, is I actually was fortunate enough to play 18 seasons in the NFL, but who's counting, you know?
Yeah.
It was a wild ride.
Unbelievable. It's an unbelievable story. And what really makes me, of course, so interested is how you wound up in the insurance business after the NFL was over and you retired. It's just very intriguing to me. And we have other players, by the way, that are teamed up with Levinson that are agents, mainly here in South Florida. But Norm's story and his statistics and his record and some of these cool stories that he's going to share are one of a kind. So I'm very, very excited about all of this. I said it like 4 times, so you can tell in my voice that this is going to be an awesome 45 minutes. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to just switch gears and back us up from day one and just tell you just a couple things, and then I'm going to ask Norm his first question here for the podcast. He's an amazing person for the short time that I've known him, father of 3 boys that are all successful in their own lives. And Norm's got an interesting story here, and I think that he's an unbelievable person. The first thing you do when you look him up on Wikipedia, it talks about how you saved someone's life, Norm. So let's I hate to start with that kind of story, but let's start there, and then we can jump right in. Do you want to tell us what happened with that? I see it all over the internet.
Oh yeah, that's really kind of a funny story. I guess not so much for the person that was in the car, but it was December. It was a little bit icy. I was on some back roads taking my son back to his school, driving him to school. Do it every morning, and I came upon this car that was on my right-hand side. It was upside down, and it was about at a 45-degree angle down in this ditch, and the ditch had water in it. Well, I looked around, and really there was nobody around. There wasn't much traffic coming by, and there was some person standing out there on a phone. I'm like, well, it looks like they might need some help. So I get my son Jameson. We come out there, and we go take a look at this situation, and there's this lady who's sitting upside down, and I mean, she's out of her seatbelt, but she's kind of on the roof on her hands and knees, and she's just panicking because this ditch had water in it, and water started coming into the compartment there inside her car, and she was kind of trapped. The doors wouldn't open. She was freaking out, but I could see that she wasn't really in terrible danger. So again, nobody's around. So I go out and I grab a big rock and I start beating on this back window. And if anybody's ever really tried to break out a back, window of a car, it's not real easy unless you have the right tool. Well, I had a rock and I was smacking on this thing pretty hard, and it wasn't breaking. I finally got it to break, helped this lady out, and I set her down on the side. And by this time, there was a couple people around, and some people came up, put a blanket around her, and I'm like, okay, this looks like this is under control. So I left and went on to drop my son off to school, and I was in real estate at the time, and I had some khaki pants on. I could see that now they got them all dirty. So I come back by. I stopped. By this time, there was fire trucks and everything, and I stopped in, and I said, hey, if you need anything, I was here. I broke the window. I got her out. If here's my name and number, and I left. I went back to work, and I got to work, and I had an assistant working for me who used to work at the front office at the real estate, and she has all the local. This is not a big place. This is Kitsap County, Washington. It was a small little town, but she worked the front desk. So she was in charge of all the media. So I told, hey, Trish, here's what happened. I kind of go through this little story. And she goes, oh my gosh, you did what? And she made a big deal out of this thing. And I said, I got to go back and change my pants. I go home, change my pants, come back in, don't think much about it. Well, she takes this and runs with it. So she calls the local paper, and next thing you know, I start getting a phone call from the paper. I'm like, how'd you hear about this? And then I look at her and I can see her smiling, and that led to I guess getting on the AP. And next thing you know, the one after another of the local TV stations here in Seattle, ABC and CBS and NBC, started calling me, and they wanted information. Then they wanted to meet out at the scene, and then I had camera crews out there, and I'm doing one after another, and then ESPN picks up on this, and they want my son and me to come down to a studio they set up in Tacoma, Washington. We drive down there, and we're on, I think it was ESPN2 at the time, and it grew to the point where, and this is kind of funny, I didn't think much of this. This was just kind of not necessarily a routine day, but I have a friend in Atlanta, all the way across the country where I lived for a while. Well, I played on the East Coast. And he calls me up and he says, tell me about this, what you did. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, I was just listening to Paul Harvey, and he mentions that you saved this person's life. And I was just cracking up. I'm like, are you kidding me? This went all the way to Paul Harvey? And it was a story that just snowballed. And the funny thing is, I didn't think a whole lot about it but it went and just grew. And I remember asking one of the camera crews who came all the way out from Seattle. So Seattle to where we are is, you across some water usually. And I said, why is this such a big story? He goes, oh, we're just chomping at the bit for, positive stories. And I said to him, well, God, that's not really my view of the news. It seems like you're looking only for negative stuff. He says, no, we love these kinds of things. So that was the story, and it grew, and it's on my Wikipedia, and I don't know who writes that stuff, but it was fun.
That's funny. That is funny. I always try to do some research on our guest speakers, and obviously I'll do a Google search, and it was like one of the first things that came up. So I told Norm earlier before we started, I said, we got to talk about how you saved this person's life. It's all over the place. And, of course, he's like the local superhero, but he's a humble guy. He's like, Bill, it's not even that big of a deal. I'm like, come on, let's talk about it. It is a big deal. But it shows you the kind of person you are, and that means everything to me. I think it just shows you're a humble person with integrity. And so, but anyway, I love to hear it. I read about it, so hearing it now is even better. But let's talk about. And by the way, the son that you were with, is he the one that's 6'8", or was he 6'8" at that time?
No, he's 6'4", and this was elementary school.
Okay.
No.
Oh, okay, got it.
He was my youngest son.
Got it. Okay. Are you a pretty big guy too, Norm, in person? Like 6'4", 6'3"?
I'm 6'2", 220.
220. Wow. Yeah, still a big guy. Okay, love it.
Wasn't exactly my playing weight, but
wow, that's
too far off.
That's impressive. So, speaking of playing weight, let me just tell you some other stats real quick that I found, and I'm going to talk about it real fast. I don't know if Norm wants to talk about it or not, but it's impressive. 1,736 total points. And the Seattle Seahawks leading scorer. Okay, that was at retirement, Norm, or is that still today?
That's
for the Seahawks.
Yeah, I'm 60 years old, and that's still an active stat of mine. I'm still the all-time leading scorer for the Seahawks.
Unreal. And when he retired, okay, so I think you just said Norm's 60 now. When he retired, he was number 4 all-time leading scorer in the entire NFL, which is also very impressive, okay? So obviously things have changed since then, but that's unbelievable at retirement to be number 4 in the league. So I don't know, that's amazing. And then just a couple other things. Most consecutive streak for extra points, and led the NFL when he played for the Steelers. Okay, that's another huge statistic. I mean, so Norm, you were the man back in the NFL, obviously back then. So that's amazing. And what I think everybody wants to hear too is just growing up. Like I know you said you were very athletic, and your father was a coach and a teacher, and also I believe he almost made it to the pros in baseball for the Yankees, and then also played, I think, for the Cleveland Browns. But tell us a little bit about. Let's go back and tell us, as a kid growing up, was this your dream? How did you wind up to the place that you ultimately led to and were?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in Southern California, and, we didn't have, obviously, any of the electronics back in that day. The VCR wasn't even available. So everything we did was outdoors, and the weather was just that kind of weather. It was outdoors. So I'm riding my bikes, and we're playing over the line down the street, and I'm playing catch across the street, or playing with frisbees, or whatever it was. It was all outdoor activities, and I played year-round sports, whether it was basketball at the boys' club. Back then, it was the boys' club. Soccer at recess, because it wasn't even organized, but and flag football and all of these things. And my parents were both school teachers, which was nice because we'd have the summers off. My dad also was a deputy sheriff, and he worked at night. So I don't know, looking back on it, how in the world he was a teacher during the day, deputy sheriff at night, and had that I just didn't realize what kind of effort and energy and dedication he put into his family, but it was crazy. It was funny. He'd show up to my soccer games in the police car. He'd be off on the side, watching from his car whenever he could, my games, or be, in the stand. So my parents were school teachers. My dad had quite an athletic background, and he was a really good baseball player. And like I mentioned to you, he was actually drafted by the Yankees as a pitcher. I mean, not a top pick. I never did go into that because he went into the Army and also the Marines. But in the Army and the Marines, he played football, and he went to school at UCLA, went to college at UCLA, and then to Santa Barbara, and he played football there, and is in the Hall of Fame there in Santa Barbara for football. Santa Barbara no longer has a football team, but he's still in the Hall of Fame. And then he went on and had a little stint with the Cleveland Browns back in the heyday of Paul Brown and all of that. And then he, in high school, was also coaching. So he coached to a lot of championship teams in baseball. He was a very successful high school coach, championships there also. So I grew up in a family of teachers and coaches. And then me playing so many sports, I had so many coaches. And that was the environment I grew up in. And so then I went on to play at UCLA. I got a scholarship, and I'll kind of add, and I'll make this kind of short. A lot of things happen for a reason, most things. And I got hurt playing football. I played outside. I played every play of the football game basically. I thought of myself back then, I was a tight end. I also played outside linebacker, but I also punted and I also kicked. The only times I wasn't on the field is on punt return and kickoff return. Otherwise, I was on everything else. Well, I hurt my shoulder. I had to go into a doctor. I go into the doctor with my dad. He says, "Oh, so how'd you do this?" "Oh, I played football and my shoulder popped out and this and that." And he says, "Okay." Well, and I said, so I played tight end. I kicked. He goes, "Oh, you kicked?" I said, Yeah, I kick." I said, "Oh, okay." He says, "Do you know Ben Agajanian?" I said, No, I don't know who that is." He says, "Oh, well, he's involved with the Dallas Cowboys and he coaches kickers over there at Long Beach State. Every Wednesday you can go there. It's free or whatever." And I leave there and I asked my dad, I said, "Who's Ben Agajanian?" He said, "Oh, well, he was actually a straight-on kicker. He played for a couple of people." He goes, "Yeah, I've heard of him." Well, and my dad saw that I had, or must have seen that I had some talent, so he wanted to help me with that. So we started showing up at Long Beach State. Here's Ben Agajanian. He's really the only kicking coach. And as a rule, there were no kicking coaches. There's special teams coaches in the NFL, which do X's and O's. But as far as kicking, wasn't a whole lot of help you had in the NFL. But he was one of those that actually with Tom Landry and Dallas Cowboys there, he was an actual kicking coach. He didn't do the special teams, but he would take the kickers and punters under his wing, and he had this free little thing. So he saw talent in me, and he started taking me under his wing. And so I'm working with Ben Agajanian, doing his kicking camps and doing private demonstrations for other kids. And I think that helped me get into UCLA. And then ultimately, it gave me a lot of background that once I got into the NFL, and like I mentioned, there's no real kicking coaches. I learned to coach myself, teach myself, and there was a time I was running our meetings here with the Seattle Seahawks because our special teams coach knew I knew more about kicking and punting than he did. And so when we watched our own films of practice and all this and that, he'd leave and go into an offensive meeting, and I'd help the putters and kickers there in the meeting room during training camp. So that was kind of fun. But that's kind of my background and where, how I got there. And it was kind of funny that the way I thought about it, I didn't remember being just saying, "Oh, I'm going to be an NFL, kicker." I don't remember ever really thinking that. I just played so many sports, was pretty good at pretty much all the sports. It was just kind of a natural progression. It wasn't until college that I saw colleges interested in me. And now I wasn't drafted. I was a free agent. We had a long draft back then, and I didn't get drafted. But when I came out of college, there were 7 teams interested in me, and I wanted to go to Seattle the most because that's where my mom grew up. That's where I had all my extended family. I didn't let them know that, but luckily I landed here where most all my relatives were as a rookie. That was really fortunate and great. But what I was saying is I don't remember having these dreams and aspirations of one day playing in the NFL. It just seemed like a natural progression.
Wow, that's interesting. Very
interesting. Because people ask me that question all the time, and I just don't remember having that as a dream. It just that's how it happened as I grew through my athletic career.
What was growing up, what would you say, was there one thing that you really wanted to do? Like, hey, when I'm an adult, I want to be a doctor, an attorney, in the life insurance world, NFL. Was there anything that really kept you focused?
Well, I'll say this. Life insurance was certainly never something that I would have thought about. That is for sure. No, but my parents kind of wanted me to be a dentist. So for a short period of time, I was thinking about doing that. And, I don't remember having, aspirations of being a fireman or, I kind of liked the police officer. That was an interesting, I like that. My dad was a sheriff, deputy sheriff. But I wasn't really thinking about it. When I was in college, I was pretty busy. I was a pretty good student. Yeah. Football takes up a lot of time, weekends, every day after school, blah, 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 blah. It was kind of tough. Plus, I was in a fraternity, so trying to balance all of that was, a challenge enough, let alone trying to figure out what direction I was going to go when I was out of college. And I was just kind of, I'm not going to say I was winging it, but I didn't really have a real focused plan on where I was heading at that time.
Well, I can say this: you must have been very, very talented and focused and a special person, because here, this wasn't even really your goal, and you get drafted, and here, 2 Pro Bowls, you played in a Super Bowl, 2-time Golden Toe Award. AFC conference champion. Which it means you played in a Super Bowl game. It's just unbelievable. So to hear the story, and it just shows what kind of person you are. And we love to hear this stuff. Okay, so let's. I think this is a good one. We have a lot of younger audience on. We have a lot of veterans that listen to the podcast. But I think this is a good lesson for all of us. If you had a very, very successful career, right? And it's not even over yet. In fact, you're just getting started in the insurance business and agency, team building, and recruiting. So I love this one. If you can go back, let's say 30, 40 years, what would you tell the younger Norm that maybe would have helped you even more with all of your success as a father and a pro football player and now an insurance agency owner? Any lessons that you would have, anything you would have done a little differently?
Well, certainly. There would have been. There's not a lot I would have done, say, differently.
Okay.
But there's always, you can look in the rearview mirror in hindsight and say, boy, there's a few things I would have done a little differently. I don't have any one big thing. But here's something that's really kind of weird, and people are going to say, oh, that was a setup. Let's see, it would have been actually more than 30 years ago, but I happened to have been playing football. I bought a $250,000 universal life policy. I had a little bit of money. I wasn't making a lot of money in the NFL, and I took a little chunk and was told to buy this. Well, that turned out to be a pretty darn good advice. I wish I knew now what I know about insurance and what that would have looked like back then had I bought more insurance.
Sure.
And if I really had understood what I was doing, that would be something that, looking here at 60 years old, we talk about 30 years ago, I'd have been 30, so I was in the middle of my career. But I'd be pretty darn happy had I set myself up even with more insurance back then.
Yeah,
so that was kind of funny. Yeah, and that cash value, all that stuff in there is extremely valuable and helpful.
Yep. And what's interesting too is when you look at a universal life back then, I didn't know of a universal life policy that had a no lapse guarantee. So that means, on the current column, everything looked great. It was based on current rates, but then typically on the guaranteed side, the policies were guaranteed for 5 to 12 years roughly. But even with that said, the cash value and the death benefit, I'm sure, has grown tremendously. So that's a great lesson learned. And I think most younger, guys, girls, maybe starting families or just getting married, they put this on the back burner, and they say, oh, I have more important things to think about, like my rent and mortgage and how am I going to pay for my kids' college education. But this is something that everyone should look into as an insurance agent or not.
Yep.
Right? I mean, most of our employees all have these policies for their kids. Yeah.
Yep. Well, here's the challenge for, let's just say, Americans. This is not something we're taught in school. I didn't understand that. It was my father-in-law's best friend was an insurance guy back in the day, and it was suggested I go and talk to him. And so we ended up getting this policy. Didn't quite understand it all, but it was told that, I could fund it and it's going to pay for itself. I don't even remember how it was sold, but I bought it. Looking back on it, I'm like, wow, I wish that point was really driven home. I wish I understood it better. I wish I would have really forecasted and seen myself, in the future. And when we talk to people as agents now, they still don't understand the value of a policy like an indexed universal life and what that can do for retirement, what that can do for just the family. They just, because they don't get that in any of our education. There's so much, we're taught to go out there and be an employee and whatever now, 401ks and all these things that really aren't very good retirement plans. They don't talk about life insurance. Financial advisors don't talk about life insurance. Matter of fact, that's the enemy. But it's usually a much better investment than the things that they're promoting because they're not, guaranteed not to go down. Well, I had 401ks and I certainly saw that go up and down, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
So I think I wish I was more educated about that back in the day. And I'm trying to, when I come across somebody who's interested in insurance, I congratulate them on them actually understanding that this is something that they need. And then, do you understand about this? And then all of a sudden their eyes just light up, and they've never heard this information before about tax-free retirement and income for life and all these different things that some of these products give them. And so that's one thing I love is doing that, giving people that education that I didn't have.
Yeah,
but I've lived it. But
that's a good point. It's a great point. And think about now. Look at the policy back then that was sold. That was one of the first versions of universal life when it just came out. Look at today's, say, indexed universal life with guarantees and living benefits and great cash values and some of the loan provisions. So it's like comparing an old Yugo to a new Lamborghini. Okay, and it's a no-brainer, and it's you, the agent, right? It's your job to explain this to your prospects, right? And you have to go through it in order to explain it. You know how that goes. So I love that example, Norm. That's big.
It's powerful when the people get that.
Yep.
When that
What company was that back then?
It was. It has since changed. It was sold. It's currently an Emeritus product, but it was Union Central was the company that it started with.
Yep, and then the book of business was acquired, and I know the whole story. Very, very interesting. I love it.
Which okay. I don't know that story, but anyway, go ahead.
It's okay. You were kicking field goals when I was first growing up into the business with a insurance spoon in my mouth. So I totally get it. Okay. All right, let's keep going. So obviously, your accomplishments are amazing on both personal side and a business side. Really incredible. And I'm curious to know. I think that every day, especially now, like we're in the middle of this pandemic. Hopefully, it's over sooner than later. Now with vaccines and everything else, but what we're going through is very challenging. I don't care what part of the industry you're in. If you're not in the industry, whatever the case is, it's a tough time. So what, let's say back then and then fast forward to today, is there something that, kept your eye on the ball, no pun intended, but what motivated you mentally and physically, to stay on the right track and do good in school and, get good grades and go to practice? And was it your parents, the family environment? Was it you just had big goals for yourself? What was it? Anything you can share?
Well, sure. In my particular situation, I didn't really have much choice but to do well in school. My kids were both, my parents were both school teachers, and that was just, it was just expected. And so I never thought of that, I'd ever be able to get a C anywhere. It was all A's and B's. It was my only focus. And not that I was so dedicated, but I knew how to, and this is a skill you kind of learn in college. You learn how to make sure you get enough done to do well on, the exam and do well in classes. But because of my going back, looking at my parents, I just needed to be a student. So I had to learn how to make sure I did well enough to have an acceptable GPA. Matter of fact, one of the years I got the Scholarship Athlete of the Year for the football team. But as far as, you had to do a lot of, there was a lot of dedication because of the full plate that you would have. Like I said, I added, a fraternity along the way in college. And that was a challenge. And then after, getting the NFL, and then it wasn't long, I kind of started a family, and, that's a challenge. Now you're balancing football where you've got a lot of dedication, a lot of focus, a lot of time, and now balance a family. And that became, has its own set of challenges. But you got to fall back on that dedication. You got to get your priorities straight. And that's probably a really good point that I would bring up for people is you really got to get your priorities straight. And that helps by finding, your why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Well, because really it's ultimately because of your priorities, and if your priority is supporting your family, then you're doing certain things to support your family because that's important to you. And so those are some of the things that would go through my head as I was going through life, but had major responsibilities that were obviously a priority, but you had other priorities too. Football couldn't be the be all end all because you had other people to help and support and be there for. So
That's interesting. And, it's funny. You just said, to figure out your why, prioritize what's important and start there, right? And it's funny. I'm in the middle of reading this book. It's called Start With Why from Simon Sinek, and he talks about, business in general, and don't focus on what you do. Figure out what the why is and why you do what you do, and then get that message out there to your customers or agents or whatever the case is. It's all about the why. And he compares like Apple, Apple computers, Apple iPhone, compared to like Dell, and the different message. And Apple always explained the why you need their products, and look how they have changed the technology space, right? Dell's focusing on computers, Apple's focusing on everything, literally, and they're great at it. So that's a good point. It's funny that you mentioned that, but that's a big one. Is figure out your why, and that's really with everything that you do. So that's a big one. And then Norm, just curious, and then we're going to dive into insurance a little bit. But what also interests me is I know for myself, I need to work out and go to the gym and get my cardio in, to clear my head. We always have those challenging days or weeks. What do you like to do? What to clear your head? Do you? It could be horseback riding or yoga, whatever the case is. Is there something that you enjoy doing that helps you clear your head and relax a little bit and stay focused?
That's a good question. And probably because we didn't talk about how busy my life is right now, what I've been doing as of late is separating myself from some of the distractions and things that I have going around in my life, and I come out to my office. My office, I can close my door. I live on 5 acres, and we have a lot of animals, but we have a small old farmhouse, but we have a pretty big barn, and my office is in my barn. And I can get away from the kids. I can kind of get away, even though I'm in the barn, I can get away from the animals. I can close the door. I can put my headset on.
Yeah.
And it gives me time to kind of think. And I've got computers here in front of me with multiple monitors. And if I want to, focus and do business, I can kind of escape. And so that's a bit of my escape, is just to separate myself from everybody else and get into a quiet place and do what it's going to take to get me to either focus or relax or whatever I need. And that's about as far as I can go. I can't even afford to take vacations because we've got too many things going around here to take care of. We've got young kids now. We've got probably 40 animals on the farm. Wow. They all need to be fed and cleaned up after and watered, and it goes on and on and on. So the ability to just go take a vacation is not even there. So I got to kind of escape. Yeah, I have to escape at home.
Yeah. Hey, I totally get it. Do you still do you still work out and do any cardio or anything, or not really anymore?
I absolutely need to, and I say it to myself all the time. Our house is so small. We've got multiple cardio equipment and everything, but it's on the porch. It's just kind of in storage, and we need to figure out how to set something up in our basement to actually do that. But our basement's full because we kind of combine 2 very large houses and properties. And it's a nightmare over here, but we are committing ourselves to say, hey, we got to set up a little workout room, someplace where we can now go in the basement, lock the doors, and then do some things like that, because I think that would be a great escape to get back. But it's been a long time. I mean, I was in shape throughout my career, obviously. My career went into, I was pretty much 40 when I played last, and then I kind of kept in shape for a few years after that. So I was in very good shape.
Oh yeah, that's why I was asking. I saw some of your pictures. You were
15 years ago.
Unbelievable shape.
Yeah, and then it's kind of haven't done much at all, but I certainly have to get back to it. I'm feeling physically some of my age, and I'm like, this is not acceptable. This all has to change, and I will change it. But I've got some bigger fish to fry immediately, and one is, building my insurance agency. So that's
got it.
A priority of mine right now. Part of the why.
Perfect segue into the next question. We're shifting gears again now, and we're talking about the favorite part of our episode now. So where Norm is today, right, with his insurance career and his agency and teaming up with Kevin and Alex. Let's just talk real quick about how you even wound up in this business. And I know you met Kevin, who's your partner, and let's just back up a little bit and talk insurance now. How did this all begin?
Well, when I was done playing football, I didn't know exactly what direction I was going to take. But I knew one direction is like I did not want to go work for somebody, kind of in air quotes there. I didn't want to go into that corporate world. I wanted to find some, I had some money when I retired. I don't have as much now for a number of reasons. But I didn't, so I had to kind of figure that out. And so when I retired, I was living on the East Coast in Atlanta, lived there for 9 years, but moved back to the Northwest where a lot of my roots were and family and such. So we moved to a place that was pretty much unknown. So we kind of had to start from new. It was in the Seattle area, but it was in an area that wasn't the hustle and bustle of Seattle, but it was close enough to Seattle. But I had to meet new friends and do a lot of different things. And one of the friends I met was he was in mortgage. And he said, you should go talk to this guy about real estate. And I always kind of admired real estate, at least from afar. I didn't understand it. So you don't have to hear the whole story, but I went into real estate for a while. Went into real estate for 10, 15 years. I actually still, I think, have my license, but I don't hang it. I haven't sold real estate for over 10 years. But that really wasn't my passion. It wasn't really, it turned out it just wasn't a great fit for me. Plus, saw some major downturns, hit the market crash in housing, and nobody was having fun. And I thought, you know what? Nobody's having fun here. I don't care if you're an appraiser or a title company or a mortgage or a buyer seller. It just was awful. And I said, this isn't for me. So I started looking, and I was kind of floundering. Had a friend who got into insurance in kind of one of the network marketing type insurance company things. And it's probably not the one people might think out there, and I don't know a lot of them. But I followed him and what he was doing for a long time, and they had a great product. And I started thinking that might be a direction. And watched it and asked a lot of questions and observed for over 3 years. And I finally went to my Kevin, who I've known for 20 years or so. We've done some business things together. I always loved Kevin. We're very, very tight, and we think alike. And I trust him, and he trusts me. And so we've done a lot of things, and both of us are looking. It's like, what are we going to do? How are we going to figure this out? And I mentioned this about insurance. He says, well, I used to be in insurance. And we were going to go down that road. So once we decided to finally, after a couple of years of looking at this, that we were going to do that, Kevin finds something else. Once he thought about, insurance, he says, hey, how about this? So he opened up to an idea of another company. And I said, you know what, that sounds even better. I like that. So we jumped into this company. I got my license January of 2020 and bought into all the hype at this other company. And it was focused on belly-to-belly sales. It was focused on dialing a bazillion leads, basically spending 2 days out of the week just dialing the phone. And with my lifestyle, I couldn't do that. I didn't know how other people could do it. I watched some people make a lot of money. And also it was based on simplified issue products. which absolute need for it. There's, especially when you're working with final expense. So I sold, quite a bit of final expense, sold a simplified issue, but found that simplified issue absolutely was not a fit for everybody, and I wasn't serving them best. And I got frustrated with the belly-to-belly in my area with traffic and trying to coordinate schedules and all of that. And it was hard. The model was hard for me. I loved the insurance. I loved talking with people. But the model was really difficult. But, the way they promoted it, this is the be-all, end-all. I didn't know any better. And I bought into that. And I bought into the hype that this is where it's all about. Well, Kevin, who likes doing this, he's out looking around. He lands on, I think, through a Facebook post or whatever. He started communicating with Alex. He says, "How are you doing? What you doing?" And you have to ask him how that all that went. But Kevin calls me up and he says, "Man, what about this? I just talked to a guy. We're having another conversation tomorrow, but what little he shared with me, he's got some real, things. And he actually came from the company that we're talking about." I said, "Well, let's talk to him." So we talked to him the next day. And Alex is just a great guy. But he tells us the advantages of Levinson. And he says this was his fourth stop. He's done this, and he stopped where we were, and he moved on. And when he was telling us, and we compared and contrasted what we were currently doing and what Levinson provides, Kevin and I get on the phone by ourselves and say, "Are you kidding me?" The problem with the model that of the previous one was this is the whole solution. Now we're gonna do sales from home. We can do sales across the country. It's no longer belly to belly. There's no traffic and filling up your gas tank with gas getting so expensive, and driving around in seedy neighborhoods and knocking on doors with no shows, and it was just tough, and it wasn't that much fun. But I thought that's what you needed to do. So we start talking about the advantages here at Levinson, and you can build across the nation, and you can do it all through the phone and internet. And they have tools, and their technology is light years ahead, and then on and on and on. And I just went, "Are you kidding me? This could be our panacea. This is where we need to be." And so that's how that whole transition came to be. That's how we landed here with Levinson. And our whole focus, Kevin and mine, has been, we're up there in age. We're starting this late in our career. We both have a background in building teams. We both love people and helping people. And we see this as our retirement is, managing a team, much like, what you guys had started long ago and have built to the point where now you guys don't sell any insurance. You're managing your giant team. And, that's kind of our focus. And we partnered there with Alex, and Alex really opened his eyes about building that team and retiring, because Alex has, quite the story. Yeah. But, he would love to retire early, and he's a young guy. And we aren't as young, but we want to build that team and get to the point where we're not selling and writing with our own pen, but helping other people, build their dream and build their teams and sell insurance. And, we locked arms with Levinson here. That's kind of my story.
No, that's a great story. Very well said. And I'm going to just say a couple things. I want to unpack some of this. I will add that, one of the hardest parts of this business, and it doesn't matter if you're at the agent level, GA, MGA, IMO side, it's finding people you can trust with integrity, that are humble. And you, Kevin, and Alex are a great example of three gentlemen that represent that exactly to a point. Okay, so that's number one, first and foremost. Okay, and that's the way I look at it. Number two, here's what's so interesting about this dynamic, okay, in my opinion. I'm always talking about like the MLM fluff. I'm not going to mention any names, but you're not getting the whole story. It's like, you hear, oh, you're going to make 172% commission. You're going to bring in your friends and family and recruit them, and you don't have to sell insurance, and you're going to sit back and make $100,000 a week. Okay, which we all know it doesn't happen like that. Okay, so, we've always said since 1972, we're going on our 50th anniversary, you tell it like it is, 100% transparency. We have all direct contracts, right? And in the long run, you wind up winning anyway, okay? You might not have that short, 5-year run, you're making millions of dollars, and then, in 7 years, people can't even say your company name because it's embarrassing, or, there might be people after you. You're always better off doing the right thing, even if it takes a little longer. We've always stood behind that. And so here's my point that I wanted to make as far as Kevin, Alex, and Norm go. So, together, the three of them, okay, they have a ton of belly-to-belly experience. Okay, Alex is like a telesales king, and Kevin puts the pieces together. They make an unbelievable team, and they work with a lot of the newer, greener agents, or even the experienced agents that maybe are looking for good lead programs, whatever the case is. Now, we come in, we're obviously at the top IMO level, where, of course, we have the top contracts, and you get to leverage all the tools, technology, websites, CRM tools, everything else, all the bells and whistles. So I love this partnership dynamic, whatever you want to call it, because if you're a newer agent out there, you're looking for some one-on-one, hands-on training, their team will do exactly that for you, and then you get to leverage all of us. We're the national IMO with 20,000 agents, right? All the top tools, contracts, whatever you want to call it, okay? So you leverage everything from us, but you're getting that one-on-one training from Norm, Kevin, and Alex. So it's a great, great dynamic, and I encourage you, I'm going to, again, give you Norm's website at the end, but I encourage you to definitely reach out if you think that it's a good fit for you. And then I also want to say, and Norm mentioned Alex's story, it's very interesting. He's a younger guy, very successful in the insurance business, a great training platform. We're actually going to do the first ever Part 2 podcast episode next month, and we're going to feature Alex. So you're going to get to hear his life story and then how he's working with Kevin and Norm with a bunch of agents and their team. So that's going to be really cool. So if you have a pen, jot that down. That's going to be the May episode. Okay, so once again, Alex will be the featured guest speaker on the May episode, and then we'll dive in even deeper. But I wanted to start with Norm just because of his interesting career and then how he led into the life insurance business, and then we'll tee it up with Kevin and Alex for Part 2. So there's more great stuff to come. Let's move on. Unless you have anything else before we move on, Norm. Anything else you want to mention?
Well, I do. Going back to that compare and contrast, one of the totally refreshing things that for me here was just the support. You guys have done an absolutely amazing job. I think I've heard you guys have 22 employees that are there to do nothing but help and service the agents. And, it was funny. I was calling some of these guys, Noah and, Andrew and all these, and Josh, and I'd call them and I'd say, are you getting tired of hearing from me? Am I on your blacklist? I'm surprised you still answer my phone. Because, I call you and ask you so many questions. You must be tired of it. And I don't want to take you away from, what you're supposed to be doing. And the answer was, this is exactly what we're supposed to be doing. We're here to support you guys. And it was just such a breath of fresh air to have support like that, to be able to call a number and have somebody answer and actually provide help. And email companies when you have unusual cases and do things, take a lot of that burden off of us, or direction. I don't know how long they've been working with you guys, but as far as I can tell, they've been working a long time. They usually have the answers. They know about all these companies, and you have such an array of companies. It's just awesome. And, I didn't finish a point that came to me when I was talking about where I came from. We were talking, mentioned everything was simplified issue. Well, and that's certainly got its advantages and its points and its needs. But there's a lot of people out there that don't need simplified issue, and you're not serving them the best you can. And that didn't sit well with me. But where I was before, I didn't have those other products that would serve my client the best. And so coming here, that just opened my eyes. And I feel that there's not a client that I can't give not only just the best product and the best price available, on the planet. That's my focus now. And that's my thinking now. And I think that's such an advantage. Such an advantage.
And thank you.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
No. I was just going to say, and that what you just said is exactly right. And to Norm's point, when we first all got on a phone call to discuss the podcast and how we're going to do a part 1 and part 2, the first thing Norm said to me, okay, and I didn't tell him I'm going to say this on the podcast, but he said to me, Bill, I'm looking forward to this. I'm excited about doing this. If I can bring value to your agents, I'm in. He said, and one thing, I'm going to tell it like it is. I'm not going to say anything that's not true or, something that goes against my grain. I'm going to tell it like it is, and if you're okay with that, let's do it. And I said, Norm, that's the only way we would do it. Okay, so that's the kind of person Norm is. Okay, and that tells it all because, most, I shouldn't say most, but some agents out there, would jump on this thing and say, oh, well, I'll tell them I did $10 million of sales in the last 2 weeks and that will get everybody to call me. Norm said the opposite. He said, Bill, I'm going to tell everyone the true story, just like it is. If they want to work with us, they want to learn more, great. If we can bring some value and someone walked away with a new nugget to help them and I never talked to them again, that's great too. So that, again, just shows the proof is in the pudding here, okay? And there's no embellishing or anything. That's the way it is. So, okay, Norm, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you want to mention something else?
Well, I think I do. So you mentioned the team we've got going with Alex, Kevin, myself, and we're trying to really create something here. Alex is putting together training modules. Kevin and I are going to really be putting together systems to help people create. A lot of people don't want to create something, but there's a lot of people that do. And when I'm talking about creating something, that's, building an agency, creating, income streams for a long period of time, creating retirement. We want to bring that kind of system, that kind of belief. And if we can, the only people that, I want to make sure that are contacting us are people who are sincere, who have the client's best interest at heart, people who are honest. And if those 3 qualities are there, we'd love to have them. And we're going to create some systems and hold some people to help them build their dreams here with life insurance along with Levinson. And that's kind of what our focus is. And if there's people out there that sounds appealing to, we'd love to talk to them.
I love it. I love it. And I've seen what they've put together, and it's very, very impressive. I'll tell you right now, Alex's training platform, especially for newer agents, okay, and is second to none. He's like a telesales professional, knows all the software technology, has the lead program, so some great stuff. They take a very minimum percentage to leverage their platform. So, again, just let us know. And, again, I'll share the website at the end. We're just about done. But I'm going to second everything Norm just said. And then I'm also going to mention, another point you were talking about, some of the MLM fluff, and maybe some of your past life insurance sales with simplified issue, final expense. The problem with a lot of that, and final expense, of course, is great. We do have all the technology and lead programs and everything else just for final expense. There's nothing wrong with it. For certain people, perfect. It's a great fit. But when you're an agent and that's all you're selling and thinking, here's the problem. A simplified issue product, for the most part, especially years ago, they were priced 20 to 40% higher than a fully underwritten product. So what happens a lot, you're writing this big book of business, there's going to be another agent that comes in the door that undercuts your price by 20, 30, 40%, and a lot of your business is going to be replaced. So my point is, and what Norm also alluded to earlier, was have all of the top products for all of your clients and do what's best for your client, because that's going to pay off in the long run. It might be a simplified issue final expense, or it might be an IUL traditional fully underwritten product. But nowadays, with all of the new technology and the underwriting technology, the convenience is identical to, say, a simplified issue final expense, but you're giving them the best bang for the buck IUL product. They're both issued in a few days with no exam. So there's no black eye now any longer. So anyway, the point is you need to have access to all of the most competitive products, point blank, for all your clients. That's it. That's what it comes down to in a nutshell.
Let me add to that, because that happened to me.
Okay.
That happened to where I would have clients that I either couldn't quite land, or I did land, and then I got a charge back because somebody swooped in, had a better product. And then, you know how that made me feel.
Yep.
Because I had to kind of promote them that I'm giving them the best thing for them, which I didn't necessarily believe in, but I didn't understand it as well as I do now. Wasn't able to flip the side of the coin and see what I can see now looking back, and it made me feel terrible. I felt like an ass because, I kind of put my reputation on the line, saying, "Well, this is the best we're going to do," and it just wasn't. And now I can do that, and it makes me feel better. My heart isn't heavy about that any longer, because I know that I can give them
you can do the right thing.
I can do the right thing.
Exactly. And that's not your fault at all, even though the client doesn't know this, but that whoever you were reporting to, and again, we're not mentioning names, but they need to, if they know that there's a better option, they need to share that with their agents. And that's just, it falls on their shoulders. But again, it makes you look bad because you're the relationship builder. You're the one that has the direct contact with the client. So anyway,
we're on the front line.
Yep, exactly. Just like Marines recon, you're in first.
Yep.
So, all right, let's switch gears a little bit. By the way, the part 2 episode with Alex, we're going to dive in even deeper. You'll get to hear from him and his awesome story, and then we'll, of course, share his information as well, so you can hopefully join the team if this is a fit for you. Let's just a couple other things, and then we're going to wrap this up. Is there any good personal, maybe some good stories on a could have been in the NFL, maybe before the NFL, after your insurance career? Any personal stories that you can share with the audience? Maybe a life-changing moment, something that maybe put you in a different direction. Anything that you want to discuss?
Sure. And I don't know about if this changed direction or anything, but you'd asked me a question and made me think about something about this podcast. And it was the question is a little bit different than how you suppose it had to do with what would you, what are some, I can't remember how you said that, but here's going to be my story. What it made me think about is the younger generation these days. There's something that I think is missing a lot, and it's not their fault. I think it's how society has framed a lot of things and how society has changed. But this was a point that I learned early in my career in football. And that is accountability. I don't think there's a lot of, I think as a kind of a generational thing, a lot of younger people have lost kind of accountability. They've learned to blame and point fingers and they're victims a lot. And I would encourage people to kind of get out of that mindset because it doesn't serve you well at all. And I learned accountability very early on, and it's kind of a funny story. I was never a finger pointer and all of that, but, I had I could get a little bit better on accountability. Well, this was back early in my career with the Seahawks, and I had a coach here who actually just passed away within this last month. But he taught me a lot of lessons. They were hard lessons, and he was a tough guy. He was a crazy special teams linebacker guy in the NFL, known for just being crazy. Well, he brought that crazy to his coaching and style. And I was somewhat afraid of him, but I did learn a lot. Well, one day I was at a game and I missed a field goal. And the snap wasn't very good. And there was a little bit of a mishap on the snap and hold. And I missed the field goal. But, I missed the field goal. So I come off the sidelines. And he comes over to me and he's like, it's almost kind of like he's patting me on the back. He's like, oh, okay, well, God, what happened there? Did that snap kind of throw off your rhythm or what? And I didn't know it at the time, but he's totally baiting me. And I said, well, yeah. And I got about that much out. And man, he laid into me. He didn't want to hear it. I had to take accountability for everything I do. And he laid into me because he wasn't going to let me come up with any excuse. It was all on me. It's my accountability. I'm in charge. When I go out on that field, my job is to put that ball through the uprights, and whatever else happens, that's still my job. And ultimately, it's his job to make sure that ball goes through the uprights. And he reports to the head coach, and the head coach reports to the owner, and he would say, and I think we can use this language. He goes, shit rolls downhill. And I learned that was the last time I would even think about making an excuse, even though he kind of set me up. But he taught me a real life lesson there. And I think that is something that will serve people more if they understand they're in charge of their decisions. And almost any time you can think of yourself as a victim, you say, you get in a car wreck. Hey, it wasn't my fault. I'm a victim. Well, that's true, but you chose to get in that car. You made decisions that got you into that wreck. Almost anywhere you see that in the world, you can look at it as I was responsible for the decisions I made that ultimately led to this thing. And a lot of people will look at this thing at the end and then they'll point fingers that I'm just a victim. It was all out of my control, but it really is all in your control. And to understand that actually serves people way better than pointing fingers, thinking they have no control over everything because they're just victims of the world and circumstances and society.
Love it. I couldn't agree more. And we teach that here in the office with all of our employees. And I do this for myself in my personal life. And that's what team building is all about, if you think about it, right?
It is.
Accountability. Yep. So I love it. Yep. I think that's a huge point. I don't care if you're playing football, kicking field goals, selling insurance. It all comes down to the same exact thing. It's doing the right thing and holding yourself accountable to do exactly that. So, okay, this was great stuff. I have just one other thing here, and then we're going to wrap this up, put a bow on it, and get ready for our part 2 episode next month, which I'm very, very excited about. So just one other thing here, Norm, I have a last question. First of all, do you want to leave the audience with anything else Norm, and I will say this just real quick, if you want to write this down, to get a hold of Norm, use his website, normjohnson.com. And there's like a little question or comment box to reach out to Norm. Just mention the Bill Levinson Experience Podcast, and then he'll know what it's regarding, and he will reach out to you. Of course, let us know. We will make the introduction either way. And then, Norm, I'm sorry for that, but is there anything else that you want to leave the audience with?
Well, yes. And I'm going to kind of this is one thing that's certainly helped me here, and it's helped me throughout my career. The only way I could have become deficient at kicking footballs was to learn a system of doing the same thing every time. In football and in kicking, boy, I had to make sure I was exactly lined up correctly. I would make sure I had the right communication with my holder and told him exactly what I needed. I would make sure that the angle that I was coming in was exactly where it needed to be. My aiming point was exact. My kicking position, my follow, everything. You had to go through this. And it's funny when people they say, "Hey, can you help this kicker?" Well, like, sure. Well, I'll spend pretty much the whole first meeting on system and alignment and all this and getting this same every single time. Well, coming here in life insurance, since I hadn't really done life insurance and nobody taught me, I had to kind of build some systems for me that help. Not only a system on my phone call when I pick up and I'm talking to somebody, I've created a sheet and I kind of go down the list, and it's a little different than a script, but I've created it through some different scripts and some different things. And then how I do my CRM and some of my filing, I've had to create a system, and that has really helped me. It's paid dividends in football. I couldn't have done football without having a system of preparation and all of that. And I think that is important to create a system that feels comfortable, a system that is yours, a system that you do every day when you come into work, when you pick up that phone, when you dial the numbers. And that's just, I think it's important, and that's one of the things we're doing with building agency is creating those systems so people can follow a system if that's something that they want to do. So that's about the last thing I wanted to make a point about.
No, that's strong. I feel like everything in life comes down to systems and discipline. And I feel like if you can get a handle on that, okay, and you not just get excited this afternoon after you listen to the two of us go on and on for an hour, okay, but if you can sustain that, right, over the next week, month, year, 5 years, 20 years, 30 years, you will be successful, right? There's really no secret recipe that, you need to know, and all of a sudden you're going to become an MDRT type of agent. It all comes down to these systems and discipline, and it worked for Norm from 18 seasons, right? All-time leading scorer for the Seattle Seahawks, 4th in the NFL at retirement. Okay, he did something right. He figured these systems out, obviously, and he's doing it now in the life insurance world with Kevin and Alex and team, which you're going to hear about on part 2. So, Norm, great story, and I love the way this episode went, better than I expected. I think that you're an amazing person. I would say this on or off camera here. I'm very proud to call you a friend and now a business associate / partner, so thank you. For taking the time. Thank you for the opportunity. Again, normjohnson.com for more information, or just let us know and we will make the introduction. We'd be more than happy to do exactly that. I want to thank everyone for taking the time and spending it with us today on the Bill Levinson Experience. For any more information, just go on any of our social media platforms or the LevinsonAssociates.com website. Thank you again. Walk away with those nuggets and use them in your everyday system. Take care. Have a great rest of the year. Thanks again.
Thank you for joining us for the Bill Levinson Experience. Please feel free to share this podcast with anyone you think would be interested. You may also visit LevinsonAssociates.com and all of Bill Levinson's social media pages for more information.